On page 1, line 27.
Last line.
14 and insert 7.
The good gentleman from the 2nd District to move adoption of the amendment.
I move adoption of the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move adoption of the amendment.
It's been moved and seconded we adopt Amendment 195. Remarks. The good gentleman from the 2nd District, Representative Barkis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sorry, the numbers were changed. Madam Speaker, I'm going to save most of my comments to the striker, but the amendments that we're putting forth and that we start off with tonight, this speaks to the time that we're going to hear about, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight is time. More time for the process of the eviction, more time for tenants to be able to cure. As the striker is presented, it says 14 days. What this amendment does is that changes it to 7 days. And I just would like to elaborate a little bit on why. Back during the interim, many months ago, we sat down and we wanted to address the issue that we were hearing so much of, and that was the need for eviction reform. And one of the key arguments to this was that tenants just did not have enough time when they were facing the specter of an eviction. So we started to do some research, having a lot of personal experience in this and bringing stakeholders from both sides, actually starting with the tenants to see what was it that they needed. And it was all about the 3-day pair vacate, not enough time upon service to remedy. So we started to look. We started with 5. We looked at a bunch of different numbers. And when we did our research, we found that 41 states in the country, 41 states are between 0 and 7 days. So 7 days, Madam Speaker, is an appropriate time to remedy. Once the tenant is late and the grace period has expired and the landlord feels that they must serve the notice to go after this rent, to collect the rent that is due to them, they serve that notice and they're given 7 days to respond, 7 days to cure. In that 7 days, they have a chance to be able to get assistance, to find the resources to cure that, to avoid the next steps in the eviction process. So, Madam Speaker, 7 days is reasonable. 7 days works for both tenants and landlords, and I would ask that this amendment be adopted.
Thank you. Additional remarks. The good lady from the 48th, Representative Wallen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak against this amendment, respectfully submitted. Part of the design of the 2-week process, of the 2-week period to pay, is that many people in our state are paid every 2 weeks. So they get a paycheck, and if they're having to struggle with the rent, that gives them another 2-week pay period to get caught up, get in touch with their networks, and make the rent right. Grant County has voluntarily taken up the 14-day period, and they've found less reliance on rental assistance and less detainers. States like Tennessee, Minnesota, and Massachusetts all have 14 days. Rhode Island has 20 days. DC has 30 days, and none of these are states with the highest foreclosure rates. And even if they were, I would submit that 11 days is an okay time for us to stem the tide of homelessness in the state of Washington and stop these rapid evictions and families losing their homes. Commercial tenants in our state have 30 days to rectify their rent almost universally, and even if they don't pay their rent within 30 days, the court will allow them 30 days to make it right and stay on the premises. Respectfully asking for a no vote.
Thank you. Additional remarks. The good gentleman from the 15th District, Representative Defoe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill, or this, I rise in support of this amendment. As the good gentleman from the 2nd explained very well, this is a step in the wrong direction for Washington State that is going to increase our homelessness issues and that are going to reduce the supply of affordable housing that will be available for rent. And it's specifically related to the number of days that are required before a landlord can apply for unlawful detainer. The issue with the 14-day period of time is that it puts Washington State on the outside looking in for all states in the western part of the United States that have very unique property laws. Everything west of the Rocky Mountains has a unique set of property law, and the other states that are west of the Rocky Mountains have notice to vacate, days to vacate that are much less than 14. The state of California has 3 days. The state of Colorado, 3 days. Hawaii, 5 days. Oregon, 6 days. This would put the state of Washington more than twice the other states that have property laws that match and mirror our own. This is very concerning. As the good gentleman said, this would make Washington state further out than all but 5 states in our union, and these are all states that have a very different property law system: Massachusetts, Vermont, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Tennessee. This is very concerning because at the core, everyone in this body wants to see us address homelessness and reduce eviction, and that's something that we can do, but not by taking away the rights of landlords to enforce an agreement that was voluntarily entered into with a willing party. If you have this day increase go into effect, you are going to see that people are going to be much more careful with who they choose to rent. And as someone who has been a tenants advocate and tried to get folks into rental housing, this increase in the number of days is going to limit the options for those individuals. As a legal assistance attorney for the military, I have helped soldiers get into rental facilities on many occasions. This is going to raise the level of scrutiny on those soldiers and on other tenants who might not otherwise have an opportunity to move into housing like this. Because what's going to happen, Madam Speaker, is you are going to have landlords sit back and say, I'm not going to partner with that homeless assistance program like we do in Yakima County right now. Because if something goes wrong, the landlord can always recover their property after 30 days. And it still takes 30 days. Even under the 3-day current pay or vacate system, you have a 5-day grace period. Then there's 3 days that are added on top of that. And then by the time you get your show cause hearing 2 weeks later, there's another 2 weeks. By the time the writ of restitution is filed and executed upon by the sheriff, you have a full month. And at any point along that time, if you pay the full amount that's due, you can remain in your property. So what we're doing now by extending this period to 14 days, 5-day grace period, another 14 days, and then we'll talk about some other things later on, but what's going to happen, by this 14 days, we're going to end up doubling the amount of time. So it's not the 1 month that the good lady mentioned. It's going to be 2 months now, so we're going to be twice the commercial norm, and we're going to be twice what the number of days that matches with our property law system that we have effect here in Washington State. So I strongly encourage a no vote. This is fundamental to the bill, and this will be fundamental to our support.
Thank you. Additional remarks? The good lady from the 6th District, Representative Graham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to speak to personal experience. Having been a landlord with my mother together, we had a home that, when you talk about the mom and pop landlords, we definitely fit into that category. My mom's 74 years old, and a lot of these landlords, they live from paycheck to paycheck just like the tenants do. And when you start talking about the things that we're talking about as far as extending dates, you actually are pushing these mom and pop landlords out. They just cannot afford to keep absorbing. At some point in time, there has to start being some give from the other side. The home that we had was always taken care of. If something broke, it was fixed right now, right down from a school, and the rent was always kept down because you wanted to keep that long-term tenant in there. They were in a nice home, cared for, and it was reasonable. The house that we had just got sold because of the stuff that we're talking about right now. There comes a point where you just go over the edge and it's too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks? The good lady from the 10th, Representative Smith.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I just want to acknowledge that I think both the good gentleman from the 15th and the good lady from the 6th really highlighted the stories around why the amendment before us that moves the language of the bill from the 14-day timeline to the 7-day timeline is a reasonable request of this body, and I would certainly encourage a yes vote on the amendment.
Thank you. Additional remarks? The good gentleman from the 15th, Representative Defoe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm urging a yes, contrary to my concluding remark. Yes on the amendment.
Thank you. Additional remarks? Seeing none, the question before the House is the final passage of amendment, the adoption of Amendment 195. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. No. The amendment fails. There are more amendments.